So, what is the Gurkha trick? Well, the Gurkhas, who are the Gurkhas for starters? I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but they are basically a division or a unit of the British Army, and they come from the Himalayas somewhere, I think Nepal. And at the time, I knew a little bit about them because I had spent some time with the British Army when I was skydiving. That was actually something that I did before, which is why it was so weird afterwards that I was trying to protect myself so much and because that wasn't really my nature, right? It was just that everything was coming in. Has it ever happened to you that you kind of change your nature because you're just so overwhelmed by things? Anyway, so the Gurkhas. Um, are very much feared and respected in the British Army because although they're really short, they are very, very fierce fighters. And if they draw their knife, they have to draw blood, even if they draw blood from themselves, but they have to draw blood. So people in the British Army are very, very careful not to upset them, right? And we had some Gurkhas in the company where I was working because there were some security issues, and I'm not going to go into that, but they had to protect the company. And I was looking at them, how they were doing it. And one of the things that I realized was they were doing it a completely different way than I would have thought. You know, you would think that if there's security concerns and there's demonstrators out there and stuff, that they would be really fierce and, would look at you. And they had to make sure that even people who were working for the company who had just been sacked weren't coming back in. It was a very, very, it was during the credit crunch. It was a very, very stressful time. But instead of being all fierce and staring at people and stuff, what they did was actually this. Um, they came towards you and they came with this bright, open smile, right? And let me see if I can actually see this on the camera properly. Hold on. Here we So this bright open smile and asked you for bright open smile and asked you for your pass. And you would give the pass, of course, they had their hands here and there were walls on the other side, so you couldn't really get past them. But because they had such a bright open smile and was so friendly, you didn't really see it as them blocking the way. You just saw it as them being really nice to you. And they would ask you for your pass every day. And if they'd been a little bit less nice, of course, you would have said, have you seen me come in yesterday? At some point, if you're asked every single day when you come in, but we knew that they had to do it. And because they were so nice, it was actually a nice beginning to the day because you had a nice conversation with them, had a little bit of a chat, and then you went up. And that is how they got around issues that could have come up. I'm pretty sure that if somebody had tried to get past them, they would have, had a problem. But because we didn't, it was actually a really, really nice way. And then I realized, okay, I need to try this too. How can I implement this? Because they came with such an open smile and so friendly, you actually looked forward to seeing them in the morning. So you had a nice chat and you were primed positively when you went up to the office. So I decided that is a strategy that I can use. So if I go onto these campgrounds, and the problem was, of course, that I had no idea how to, even be on a campground because I wasn't really a camper. The only time I went camping was like a couple of times before, and now two of my cats had died, one from old age at 19 and the other one had cancer and died at 14, but I still had one left. I had a couple of rabbits and I didn't know how to bring them on there, if they were even going to be welcome or not. But I also didn't have a choice because I didn't have a house anymore. I was leaving England because I decided that I needed to go somewhere else, and I was planning on doing this tour to different zoos in France and Spain, and then buy something in Spain and find a new place to live. But I didn't have a place at that point, so I needed to be on the campground. I needed to bring those animals there, and I didn't have my fortress anymore. So what am I going to do, right? So what I did is I used a mixed strategy and then the Gurkha strategy on top. So the mixed strategy was that I kind of hid a little bit. I had an outside tent, and then I put
inside that outside tent, I put, there was some caging inside. So when I went out, I went into the caging basically. So the rabbits wouldn't be able to get out. They would get out into the caging and into the front tent, but not anywhere else. And the cat was so old that she didn't really care anymore, and she didn't go over either. So nobody would see my animals until, a little bit later, and then I would use the Gurkha strategy. And the Gurkha strategy, the way I used it was that, for starters, I made sure that the campground was happy with me because I paid for 2 dogs, although I didn't have dogs. So they were making additional money. And then on top of that, I went out to everybody and in the neighborhood and made sure that they loved me. So I was being so friendly to my neighbors, and I was petting their dogs and, making friendly conversation. So by the time that they saw a cat looking out, they didn't have a problem with me anymore, right? And not only didn't they have a problem, but we had a friendship. And that was a new thing for me. As said, I was doing the meetup, but I was still, really, really shy at the time, and that brought me out. And the benefit of that was, not only didn't I have any conflicts at all the entire time, although it ended up being much longer than it was supposed to be, but I also found friends everywhere.
Then, of course, things should have been fine. This should have only happened for about 2 months. And then I wanted to have a house, right? And then some things went wrong, and I went to Switzerland shortly and came back again. And then I started a new business, and I had my first client. And then COVID happened, and all my clients were gone because I had banked on English tourists and German tourists, and they didn't come back for the time that I was there, and that was months. And of course, I got locked in. So suddenly, I'm a lot longer on my tour. And not only did I get locked in, but then I got locked in for 2 months in that campground. All the other tourists went except for one Brazilian woman, and we basically ran the campground together because the manager wasn't allowed to come in anymore either. And then all these kittens around. There were a lot of cats who I then fed because I was on the campground, and all these kittens were dying. So I suddenly, I ended up rescuing kittens everywhere. And initially, because I had made friends with all of them because of my initial animals that had really worked, I managed to. The first kitten I got myself. I rescued myself. I didn't actually want a kitten at the time because I wanted to go to Australia and New Zealand once my very old pets died. But then she was just there. So I rescued her, and she was so cute, and the others saw her. Anyway, that is another strategy, but and I get into that later, and some of the other people got some kittens as well. But then, of course, during the lockdown, there was nobody else, so I had to rescue the kittens myself, and I got them in. I got several of them in. I was allowed to go to the vet with them. That was the only excuse to get out. And no, suddenly I had those kittens, and I couldn't keep the kittens within the fence anymore. So I had to suddenly extend a lot more energy outwards and reverse the energy outwards again, and make it positive in order to get some positive feedback back as well from the manager as well, because suddenly I had not just one elderly cat and a couple of elderly rabbits, but several kittens running around, and they were running around everywhere, right? So what did I do? I actually just went totally above and beyond. I paid a lot more for the campground than I actually needed to pay because I was paying for every day instead of for the entire year, which I ended up staying there. I helped animal anxiety coaching for the manager because initially the owner of the campground, liked cats and wanted the cats that were around to be fed, but she was really afraid of them. And she had a young kid of a year and another boy of 9, I think. And she was afraid of them touching them. And she was totally freaking out because she was from some South American country where she thought that they have all diseases and stuff. So I kind of gave her a little bit of education that no, actually, zoonotic diseases are very rare. There are a few of them, but we can do something about them. So I got vaccinations, not yeah, vaccinations for not vaccinations, but like spot-ons for all of them to make sure that they didn't have any fleas, they didn't have any worms and stuff, and that it was safe for her children. And she kind of got okay with it. She even at the end took one of the kittens herself, and which was really, really beautiful for the little boy as well, who loved one of the kittens. And I offered to help. I helped in the campground keep safe during the lockdown because there were a lot of break-ins, of course. So because we were there were no break-ins in our campground. We continued to be nice to the dogs and of other people, even after the lockdown was opened again and people were coming in. I even took care of some guy who was on the campground for his dog for like a week, without any pay. And then, of course, because I had all the kittens, and there were other people now coming onto the campground again as well, and some of them had dogs and stuff. They also had kids, and the kids loved the kittens. So they came to the campground, and the campground actually made more money because the people were coming to see the kittens. And then there was also this water turtle that one of the workers on that campground, who wasn't allowed to come back, had left in in kind of a dirty tank. And I had taken her out and put her into this little basically swimming pool, which I had with me for some reason. I don't know. I don't even know why I had that swimming pool. Anyway, I had it so the turtle was getting a really nice big ocean. And so they were looking at that. And then I had a trampoline as well for myself, actually. And then the kids were on the trampoline. So what I ended up being was Petra Park. And just by being outgoing, by showing people, the beautiful things as well, the campground, the manager had absolutely no problem with me being there, and none of the other people either, because I was bringing a value to them. Their kids didn't have anything to do for 2 months, and then they could come to Petra Park and play with all the little kittens. They could take a look at the water turtle. They could see how you can live with animals, and it's all fine. I even had people come up to me. There were some very, very rich people who were on the way through, who came in and who helped me spay and castrate some of the stray cats there as well. They actually gave me money, and I told them that I was, castrating the cats, and I had just helped the kittens, and they actually put money into my hand and said, "We want to help. We want to help you castrate the cats." And of course, I did that then, and I used the money for that. And I led by example. So that was such a revelation. If you think how I had started only a few months earlier, I had been in that fortress and I had the feeling I was actually so afraid to come out that I wasn't going out anymore at that point. That is how I started. I wasn't going out at all anymore unless I had to go to work, and even when I was going jogging, I didn't talk to anyone. I was afraid of everyone. Had anxiety attacks at home. So that was such a revelation.
Have you ever had this, that you realize that it's things are coming in, so you have to just throw everything at it? And that's what I was doing. I was just throwing everything positive that I had onto the situation. And it was just really beautiful, because it wasn't just that the result of all of that, of bringing so much value and helping so many people and helping so many, and then having Petra Park, which basically was the income for the campground later, because people came because of the animals. That was a completely different experience than people being attacking me because of the animals. Instead, they came because they loved the animals. And on top of that, they were helping. They were helping. I mean, people were giving me money to help with the castrations, because I was castrating some of the, not only the little kittens that I had rescued, but also castrating some of the other cats. So they were helping with that money, towards the castration. So it was a completely different experience. And it opened up my entire life, right? So the outcome and the benefit of the whole strategy was the outcome. I not only did I avoid conflict from the start, but I created relationships that I hadn't had before. And the benefit was I had so much support, so much love, and such great times. It's one of the best years of my life, basically. Now, there's an action that I'd like you to try, because if you just listen to me, then this isn't going to work, because you're just going to listen and you think it's okay. But this is one of those strategies that you don't really want to do initially. right? Because if you're afraid, and remember, I didn't get to that strategy immediately. It was literally, I had to find something because that house, my fortress, was gone, and I had to find a way to protect my animals in another way. So I was pushed towards this, and I had also had some training before to go to that meetup and do that meetup. So what I'd like you to try out, I don't know how far you are on that journey, how withdrawn you are at this point because you're at this course, or if you don't have a problem with it, but I'd like to, every one of us has situations where we're afraid, right? So I'd like you to try something out to and try it on yourself first before you try to protect one of your animals, just in case you have to practice a little bit. Next time there's a scary situation where usually you would withdraw, and you would withdraw your energy, say with an aggressive colleague or with unpleasant in-laws or frowning people in a new place or whatever. Reverse the energy. Go forward instead. And it doesn't work with everybody. So if somebody's really, really aggressive, then I wouldn't necessarily try this. Then the second strategy is better. That we're going to get to the second external strategy. But if it's the kind of situation where you're just uncomfortable and you would have withdrawn before, go towards them, but radiating love and acceptance. It's a little bit like standing on stage. I don't know if you've ever been on stage before. If you just focus on yourself and and how you come over, and if you're doing everything right and if you're fluffing your words and stuff, then you don't come over well. But if you try to serve, if you're out there, if you're looking at serving people, it's a whole different situation. It's a whole different experience, and that is that as well. You radiate good energy towards other people, and that may sound a bit foo-foo. It may sound a bit crazy in a way if you've never done this before, but it will help you change your body language. It will help you come over in a different way. Make sure that the energy that you radiate is positive and not too invasive, so not like a laser beam to go towards people, and because that is kind of, if you've never done this before, you may get into this, or you may just turn inwards afterwards. But just make it expansive and all-encompassing. Like a big radiant light that just goes big, golden light that just radiates from you, basically forwards and everywhere. If you have cats, praise their dogs. If you're afraid of dogs, go to a shelter first and learn how to deal with dogs. There's a whole lot of things that you can do to drive the threshold that you have at the moment that you're comfortable with a little bit further. And that is a really good strategy. So now we come to the first inner strategy.